weapons.
We'll talk about it. But first up, we're going to talk about this. This is what's starting all the talk. Is the FBI removed classified documents from Mar-A-Lago, and it's highly irregular. So again, this is going on with the Democrats nor the Republicans can beat a game show host with a comb over. Neither of them can beat this guy, and so that's why they're together in doing all this nefarious shit like Russiagate, which was complete bullshit, complete hoax, evidence-free conspiracy theory. That's right. And why did it take the Democrats so long to impeach Donald Trump? Because that's how long it took them to find a crime he was guilty of that they also weren't complicit in. That's why it took them so long. And you know what they impeached him for? Armed shipments to Ukraine.
For delaying
it, which was the right thing to do.
But they needed 30% of those weapons.
That's right. And now we just gave them $54 billion in weapons, and 70% of which don't end up in the Ukraine war. Where are they going? I don't know. I would guess some people inside the Ukraine government are selling them to Russia for money. I bet you any money.
The answer may surprise.
The answer just may surprise you. Or will it? Would you be surprised, Kurt, to find out that the Ukrainians are selling those weapons to Russia for money? I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised to find that out.
The most corrupt country in all of Europe, according to the New York Times?
According to the New York Times, the most corrupt country in Europe.
I don't see how they do it.
So back to FBI. They removed 11 sets of classified documents, including some marked top secret and meant to be available only in special government facilities from former President Trump's Mar-A-Lago estate in Florida on Monday. It's weird that they never did that to Hillary Clinton when she erased 33,000 emails off her private server where she kept highly classified information, which was against the law. And after she was subpoenaed for it, she erased those. It's weird that they didn't storm her house.
Jimmy, it's so weird that she's selling T-shirts that say that. She's got but Hillary's emails. You know? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Hats and shirts that you can proudly wear and go.
Her illegal emails.
Yeah, she's selling shirts of it.
In addition, agents recovered 4 sets of top secret documents, 3 sets of secret documents, and 3 sets of confidential documents, and a partridge in a pear tree, according to the new public information. According to the search warrant, the alleged crimes under investigation are violations of the Espionage Act, which outlaws the unauthorized retention of national security information that could harm the United States or aid a foreign adversary, a federal law that makes it a crime to destroy or conceal a document in order to obstruct government investigation, and another statute associated with unlawful removal of government materials. Now, Michael Tracy reminds us what the Espionage Act really is. The Espionage Act is an archaic remnant of World War I that the government has kept on the books as a catch-all to criminalize the release of embarrassing information. Woodrow Wilson demanded the act so as to crush what he called creatures of passion, disloyalty, and anarchy. Expect a swift rehabilitation of the Espionage Act, though. Why? Well, this is previously known as one of the most pernicious laws. Used to prosecute who? Edward Snowden. They used the Espionage Act to prosecute Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Daniel Ellsberg. Those are the people that they use the Espionage Act for, the truth tellers. And now it'll become a benevolent tool of preserving democracy because they're using it against Trump. And that's exactly what the goddamn Democrats are doing. So Attorney General Merrick Garland announced Thursday that the Department of Justice would seek to unseal. First of all, let me just bring in Max Blumenthal on this. Now, Max, just what is your overall take on what we've gone through so far, that this even happened and that they're using the Espionage Act?
Well, first of all, I'm having a little bit of a spotty connection here. I don't know if that's on your end.
It's on our end. It's on our end. So
okay.
I apologize. We were having.
I just want to know who to blame. Well, the Espionage Act is being used against Julian Assange. It was used against whistleblowers. It has a terrible history of being weaponized against anti-war activists, opponents of World War I in the United States. And now it is being, as Michael Tracy pointed out, rehabilitated politically in the eyes of the liberal, in the eyes of liberal Democrats and a swath of left-wingers as well, who are cheering on this FBI raid, which is a terrible development for the defense of Assange and for anyone who wants to see what this Espionage Act is. It's something that can be used against anyone who is deemed a threat against national security and the concept of national security. We don't know exactly what these files are that Donald Trump is supposedly holding that are so sensitive and that necessitated this raid. I have my own theory on what the raid is about and what the files pertain to, but just to focus on the Espionage Act, it is one of the most pernicious laws on the books used by completely unaccountable national security state to target, that has historically targeted anti-war elements.
That is exactly right. And so the Democrats are wittingly or unwittingly, and the progressives who are supporting this are unwittingly propping up the FBI's case to use the Espionage Act, which is what they're using on people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. And so if you're a progressive, that would be a no-no for you to do that. What my theory is that he took the list of the all the people who went to Jeffrey Epstein's island, all his clients, and that's what they're going into his house for, because they want that list. But I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. They said it had something to do with the nuclear codes. I bet it had something to do with Jeffrey Epstein's list, because Bill Clinton went there on that island to have sex with underage women, allegedly. And it seems like that's what that was for. So they're all part of it.
Well, if this related to nuclear secrets, that would be very serious. And so why did the FBI wait for 2 years to act?
Right? If exactly, that's a great point. So if he's had these nuclear codes for 2 years, why are they doing it now? They're doing it now because the presidential race is about to start for 2024. And they can't have Donald Trump run again. Why? Because he'll win. He will beat Demented Joe, and he will beat whoever they throw against him in the Republican Party. Why? Because the Republicans know, the Republican voters know, that Donald Trump is not liked by the establishment, even though he is one of them and he governed just like them. They don't like him. He puts a bad face on imperialism. He wants credit for the vaccine. They won't give it to him because he's a bad salesman. He's bad for the brand.
Well, you remember when did Moderna and Pfizer announce the introduction of the COVID vaccine?
After they knew he was already not president.
Right, 2 days, 48 hours after, although they had the information before.
That's right.
And it's partly because they didn't want it associated.
Hang on, we got a little bit of a freeze.
Others saying they wouldn't take.
Go ahead.
Didn't want it associated.
Could you start again? They didn't want associated what?
They didn't want the COVID vaccine associated with Trump because you had Kamala Harris and other people messaging the Democratic base, telling them, do not take it because this is the Trump vaccine and you're going to get killed. I mean, so yeah.
So that is the problem with Donald Trump with these people. The problem with Donald Trump isn't that he governs any differently or recklessly, because right now Biden's finishing his wall in Arizona and they're putting more kids in cages than Trump did, and they're starting 2 nuclear wars. So there's nothing that Donald Trump did that is crazier than what Joe Biden is doing.
That's how we know it's not the wall or the kids in the cage,
right?
Because they kept all the stuff except Trump. So that's how you know. It's just him. It's just a personal thing.
It's because he's bad. He's a bad brand for the establishment, for imperialism, and for all their domestic policies too. He really does want credit for the vax. They won't give it to him. They still call him an anti-vaxxer, and he was 100% on board for the vax. In fact, now they're going to do this, Max. Have you heard about this? Merrick Garland, they're going to unseal the warrant, which I guess isn't done often. They don't usually unseal the warrant, but they're going to do that now. Have you heard about that?
Sorry, you broke up for a second. So they're just reading the card.
They're going to unseal the warrant. Have you heard about that?
I have not. I mean, hasn't the warrant already been unsealed? Didn't Breitbart obtain a copy of it already?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, and it contains this interesting section under U.S. Code 2071.
What does it say?
This is related to concealment, removal, or mutilation generally, and it says this crime shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both, and shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States.
There you go.
So it's pretty clear what the angle is here.
Because exactly what I said. They can't beat Donald Trump. They're so corrupt. Not that Donald Trump's a great politician, but they're so corrupt that they can't beat a game show host. That's how corrupt they are.
This is really a Al Capone, the FBI going around to get Al Capone situation.
That's exactly what this is. Yes, that's exactly. And it's obvious to MAGA, but the establishment Republicans are not going along with it. I mean, they're going along with the FBI. Go ahead, Max.
Well, it's politically backfired already. There's a Politico poll out that shows that 70% of Republican voters believe this is politically motivated. They're standing with Trump. They're rejecting the voters. The Republican base is standing with Trump. And Trump had been losing ground on DeSantis in a hypothetical primary matchup. And now he's gained distance. He was already the front runner. So I can't see any other outcome that the Justice Department is planning for except for nailing Trump in a way that disqualifies him from running for president.
So this is from yesterday's LA Times. It says that Reinhart gave the Justice Department until 3 p.m. Eastern time to confer with Trump's lawyers and inform the court whether he planned to contest unsealing the documents. Trump said on Truth Social Network that he supported unsealing the warrant. Within the 20 boxes removed in Monday's search were binders of photos. How about binders of women from Matt? A handwritten note and an executive grant of clemency for conservative provocateur Roger Stone and the information about the president of France. Agents were instructed to look for communications in any form regarding the retrieval, storage, or transmission of national defense information or classified material, as well as any evidence that presidential records or classified documents were knowingly altered, destroyed, or concealed. Under the Presidential Records Act of 1978, presidential records are supposed to be turned over to the National Archives when a president leaves office. The archives had already recovered more than 15 boxes of material that were improperly taken to Mar-A-Lago. Well, they did that without the FBI storming Mar-A-Lago. Isn't that weird? Why didn't they use the same process? And because according to Trump and Trump's lawyers, they didn't even ask. The FBI didn't even ask them to go in. And Trump said, I would have let them go in. They didn't ask. Isn't that weird? It is weird.
Wait, so does that mean, from the earlier, so is this like a phishing thing? Like,
yes.
They just look for any mistake that was made.
That's what that sounds.
They have boxes. Okay.
That's what that sounds like to me. A fishing expedition.
You know, Jimmy,
that's why you can't tell them. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, because Max mentioned Breitbart had gotten access to it. It says the document obtained and reviewed by Breitbart News shows the DOJ and FBI waited several days after Reinhart approved the warrant to conduct the raid, something that severely undercuts the talking points issued by Attorney General Merrick Garland in a public statement. So it was so urgent to get there, they waited several days.
That's what you're okay. So they were saying they had to do this. They couldn't wait for Trump to get back to them, that they had to do it because it was urgent. But then now we find out that they actually got the warrant and still waited a couple of days. So that undercuts their argument for doing that. So, yeah, of course, this is a political prosecution. Just like this January 6th trial, it's the establishment making sure that a game show host can't bring any populism to the government. That's all this is. So multiple news outlets reported Thursday that the Department of Justice had already used subpoenas and other less intrusive means to recover documents this spring, but sought the search warrant because it believed Trump still had confidential or top secret material, including some related. So again, why not in a Truth Social post Friday morning, Trump suggested without any evidence that any recovered nuclear documents were planted by the FBI during the search at Mar-A-Lago earlier this week, which I wouldn't doubt one bit. They wouldn't allow Trump's lawyers to be there to watch what they were doing. And so now everything's suspect, because this is obviously a suspect prosecution. This is a political hit job. And so Of course that they're going to be probably planting shit. Probably. They planted Russiagate. That was completely made up. They planted that story about Trump on January 6th that Cassidy Hutchinson revealed because the Secret Service said that didn't happen. They totally planted that story, made it up. In a separate...
All right, stand by.
Well, are we off?
I think we're off live stream.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
In a separate post, he stated that the documents seized by agents at his Florida club were all declassified and said that he would have turned over the documents to the Justice Department if they asked. So according to Trump, they didn't even ask. Okay.
But then he would have had a chance to double check everything.
That's
and
right.
How would we catch an error that we could use?
That's right. You don't want to give him a heads up. While presidents have authority to declassify documents, Trump hasn't demonstrated that he followed normal notification procedures, which help. So who gives a F? Now that he is not president, Trump no longer has the authority to declassify stuff. In the end, it may not even matter. The 3 statutes under which he is being investigated don't differentiate between classified or non-classified information. So Justin Amash makes a good point. He says it's possible to distrust the FBI and also to distrust Donald Trump. We've seen quite clearly over the years that the FBI abuses power and also that Donald Trump abuses power like every other politician. You don't have to defend one to criticize the other. I agree. I'm not defending Donald Trump one bit. Donald Trump is just like every other politician, except that they hate him because he accidentally tells the truth sometimes. Like, hey, we're going to take the oil. We're staying there to take the oil in Syria. He just said it.
It's like he puts a bad comb over on our empire.
He puts a bad comb over on our empire. Here's what Jackson says. Jackson Hinkle says, so leftists not only support the FBI now, but they also are defending the political weaponization of the Espionage Act. How fun. And then Misty Putin says they have been. A lot of these same people are anti-Assange. Yes, they are. And I had to correct Jackson. No, they're not leftists. They're Democrats. Big difference. Democrats are right-wing, conservative, pro-war, pro-Wall Street, anti-worker party that serves the same corporations and billionaires as the Republicans. So that is not the left. The left is us. So Marjorie Taylor Greene came out, and because of this, now we've said this on this show, that Republicans can't understand a problem until it affects them personally. I think I used to say conservatives. So now that includes Democrats. Okay, so Democrats can't understand a problem until it happens to them either. So it happened to them, and now they get it. Oh my God, the FBI are doing political investigations and prosecutions and persecutions of people that the establishment doesn't like. It's laid bare. And so now they get it. And so now someone who's as repulsive to lefties as some like her is now on the same page as us. If it's real or not, call her bluff. Say you're welcome. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go, I welcome you. Thank you. Now let's work together on a bill that defunds I think there's a thing called the Breathe Act. Now let's pass that together. That's what they should have done immediately. Let's pass the Breathe Act, which I think will defund the FBI. That's not what people did. The right wing is not acknowledging, this is the classic dumb take. The right wing is not acknowledging systemic bias on the part of the FBI. LOL. They are mad that the agency went after one of them. Who gives a fuck why they want to defund the FBI? Who kicked that makes no sense whatsoever. Of course it doesn't. But if you're a hack and a partisan, you are unable to see things for as they are, and all you know is division, and you have to hate half the country no matter what. That's it. Go ahead.
Is he like? Are you now not acknowledging systemic biases because they did acknowledge it for the wrong reason?
Right? You tell them. Yes. That's. I guess you're gonna. Are they? It doesn't
make any sense.
It's someone who's concerned about keeping their place in a partisan structure that is owned by billionaires, rather than actually helping the country move forward. Go ahead.
This troll, no relation to Elliot Higgins of Bellingcat, is subtweeting Brianna Joy Gray, who had said that the FBI.
Here's what she said. I have it right here. She says Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about the FBI.
Oh boy.
Bad faith or not. In today's radar, I argue that the left should take advantage of the right's new acknowledgement of systemic bias and push to abolish the FBI, an institution that has always protected elite power, not the people. So that's what he's responding to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and systemic bias might not exactly be the right wording, but what she's saying is fundamentally correct, which is that the system is biased. The system is not acting according to the law. The system is carrying out various witch hunts, partisan witch hunts, ideological witch hunts that are designed to kneecap enemies of those who the objectives of the system. And the way it's being interpreted is, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not being intersectional and acknowledging that the FBI played a role in the murder of Fred Hampton. And until she does that, or until she acknowledges what the FBI did to Leonard Peltier, who 98% of Americans haven't heard of, then we cannot welcome this call for defunding this private, this completely unaccountable security state. No, and that therefore makes it impossible for any progress to happen here outside of this very narrow wing of the completely co-opted U.S. left.
If she does acknowledge it, then I don't believe the FBI did those things.
So here's what you said. I thought this was very well put. And you have a thread. This is a great thread. Everybody should go read it because he says nice things about me. But why was the professional activist left so irritated by Marjorie Taylor Greene's call to defund the FBI? When every DSA endorsed candidate votes to fund the feds and for $40 billion to Ukraine, while a crude right-winger slams the security state and NATO, it deepens the U.S. left's painful identity crisis. Go ahead, Max. Talk more about that.
Sorry, you broke up.
I just read your tweet. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I spell it out more in the thread, and it's something I've been thinking about ever since the emergence of this kind of lockdown left element during the era of COVID hysteria in 2021 and the post-January 6th era, watching socialist self-proclaimed revolutionaries denounce the very concept of insurrection and not just the low IQ riot that took place at the Capitol, and actually talk about how there needs to be a peaceful transfer of power in this system that they're supposedly seeking to overthrow. And then watching as so-called revolutionaries saw one command from a bureaucrat like Fauci to lock down or to fire thousands of people for not taking the vaccine, they just immediately obeyed. And just watching as the entire squad that had been put up by a supposed socialist organization and supported, AOC was marketed by the Democratic Socialists of America, and watch them just completely capitulate to Pelosi and the entire Democratic pro-war power structure around Ukraine, AOC, Espionage Act being used against Julian Assange, and her not being able to give a straight answer and stating that there are considerations and concerns there about Assange, watching them vote for the $40 billion to Ukraine, watching this the entire superstructure of the U.S. left and the professional activist class just completely capitulate, watching BLM, Black Lives Matter, be hijacked almost by design and co-opted by these NGO class hucksters, and then completely disappearing. Watching Bernie roll over after Pete Buttigieg stole the Iowa caucus from Bernie, and with this mysterious shadow app created by these dark money billionaires. And what does Bernie do instead of holding a protest? He says, "Let's move on." And so did the editor-in-chief of Jacobin. He said, "Let's move on." I mean, that's why the left is in an identity crisis right now. And the right is co-opting tenets that used to be part of the traditional left, opposition to war or interventionism. Marjorie Taylor Greene has come out and called for the pardon of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, something that no members of the squad are doing. Marjorie Taylor Greene opposed $40 billion to Ukraine. Marjorie Taylor Greene weapons to Nazis. Marjorie Taylor Greene even condemned NATO And where are the people that the professional activists left in the U.S. put up for office on any of this? Nowhere. So there's this identity crisis within the left that's being deepened by Marjorie Taylor Greene, this right-wing kook who is associated with Trump, coming out and saying things that leftists traditionally said. The identity crisis also relates to the fact that the professional left or the organized U.S. left is not seen as a threat to power by the U.S. security state
at all.
The Trump movement is, the right wing is, and this is humiliating to people on the left who fancy themselves to be revolutionaries. It's something that provokes them to overcompensate and engage not only in performative displays of radicalism, but also to ritually abuse the heretics who come out of the left or who they had seen as left-wing influencers, whether it's you or Glenn Greenwald or Tulsi Gabbard. And that's why there's an entire class of writers within these left publications. You played you showed one of them on a card before. Hang
on, hold on. Hang on.
But attack people.
You dropped for a second. Could you start that sentence again?
Yeah. There's this entire class of dweeby writer guys, blogger guys within the progressive left who produce nothing of value, do no field reporting, no investigative reporting. All they do is attack people who stray, who cross the increasingly blurry ideological boundaries that are supposed to contain and corral the left and define what it means to be a leftist, because the boundaries are so blurry these days.
They're gatekeepers, is what you're saying. They're basically
their whole
gatekeepers.
job is gatekeeping, and they're obsessed with Glenn. They're obsessed with you, and it's because to be a leftist today in the U.S. It's so hard to define what that even means when the representatives of your movement are such a bunch of sellouts.
Yeah, but that's because isn't it like a lifestyle brand now? Like so. Marjorie Taylor Greene's bad for the brand. Like it's just a lifestyle. It's not. Yeah. It's like actors and like showbiz people. So everything gets pushed towards that. I mean, it couldn't more clearly just be a brand, and then it's like you wore the wrong shoes with your brand,
right?
Because someone agreed with you on the wrong side. Yeah,
that's right. That's exactly what it is. Well, look what they're saying too. So you see stuff like this. Michael Betzloss, who's a freaking historian, he wants them to kill Trump. He literally is calling for his execution. And then you get a guy, General Michael Hayden. He says, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's kill Trump."
Well, he's also calling for the Rosenberg's execution.
Yeah,
and there are some serious questions about whether they were actually guilty. But
so this said the Rosenbergs were convicted for giving U.S. nuclear secrets to Moscow, and they were executed in June of 1953. This guy says sounds about right. So these guys are calling for...
That's not just this guy, Jimmy. That's
General
former,
Mike. I know.
NSA director and CIA deputy director.
So that's the establishment wanting to kill Trump. So that's what this is. Again, it's not that Trump did anything they didn't want. It's that he's a bad brand. He ruins their brand. It's a bad face for the brand.
And he's like a Jewish communist, apparently, according to the court historian Betzloss. I mean, why is he's comparing them to the Rosenbergs because of the whole background of Russiagate,
which is made up, which we all know now was made up, which is why there was
I wanted to say this.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say this earlier. When you hear talk about nuclear records, you can assume possibly that talks about, for example, the intermediate ballistic missile treaty with Putin being involved, that there was some Russian element. We don't know what the nuclear documents were, but this all leads me to believe that this raid relates back to Russiagate and to Spygate specifically. I'm just speculating, but I can say more about that. But you can move on, and
let's come back to that. So the response to this, them wanting to kill him, literally, these are the establishment saying, "Let's kill our former president. Let's kill Dick Cheney, who lied us into an illegal war that killed 1 million people and ordered a torture program to cover it up, or George Bush, who did the exact same thing."
The job creators,
leave them alone. But let's go after Trump because he mishandled classified documents. Let's kill him. That's what they want to do. And acceptance of violence for political ends in America is approaching the levels seen in Northern Ireland at the height of their troubles. Fanning the flames of violence through incendiary language is the worst possible thing they could be doing. And who said that? Rachel Kleinfeld. She's from the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. She's saying that what's going on right now in the United States, the establishment calling for violence against our political enemies, is exactly the same shit that happened in Northern Ireland.
I think she's saying the opposite.
What is? Explain it to me.
This is part of the messaging, the post-raid messaging, where you saw in lockstep one pundit after another echoing each other about the right wing's online call for political war. And there was obviously preparation for this in advance, that the right would be pushed into this extreme reaction, and then the Democrats and the national security establishment would milk it to portray them as a threat to national security to further reinforce that point. And then you have this right winger attacking an FBI field office, who's someone who's a military veteran. So that kind of played into the narrative. And I think what we're in and what we've been in since certainly the summer of 2020 is a strategy of tension, which is actually more reminiscent of 1970s Italy than Northern Ireland. And it's when
Go back. It's when, so you dropped for a second. It's when what?
We're talking about a strategy of tension, the kind of scenario that unfolded in 1970s Italy, when the Communist Party was still popular and there were fascist elements within and mafia elements that were being used as CIA assets. And the Italian security state would actually seek to frame the Communist Party for various terror attacks and to pit the far right and the left against one another in order to create an atmosphere of chaos, so that the average Italian citizen would sit back and say, well, we can't have the left obtain any power. We support what the security state is doing to put them back in the box. And that's what we see we saw it on a small, very small scale, for example, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where the local police pushed the BLM marchers into a direct confrontation with Kyle Rittenhouse and company guarding this mini mall. They were actually pushed into confrontation. There was no preordained confrontation. That's a microcosm of what we've been seeing take place. That's why I think January stand down on the part.
That's why. Wait a minute. That's why you think January 6th what?
That's why I think January 6th was allowed to happen the way that it did.
Yes.
So with so much access being granted to the Capitol to a braying mob, and it was because there was a stand down order. I mean, it's a fact that the mayor of D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser, gave a order for the National Guard to stay away. I was there. I personally witnessed what took place. There was almost no security there. I'd never seen anything
there
like it.
There was more security for a Force the Vote rally at the Capitol than there was for January 6th.
So I think we're still in that scenario where the FBI knew, and Merrick Garland and his crew, the DOJ, they knew that there would be an extreme reaction by the right. And that reaction was something that they were agitating, that they were aimed to incite in order to reinforce the portrait of the right as a national security threat. And so that's what she's referring to. And that's what we're going to keep hearing about going into the midterms and beyond.
So I don't see what you said as how different than I took it, but how way I read that is that
she's not criticizing the acceptance of violence against Trump. She's criticizing the acceptance of violence against, for example, the FBI or against.
Oh, okay. Oh, that is different. Okay,
and so she's blaming. Okay. She's blaming Trump and, Steven Crowder tweeted, "This is war." She's blaming them.
Oh, you're fucking kidding me. That's what she's saying.
Well, the Carnegie Endowment for Peace is like, it sits there. It's on Massachusetts Ave in D.C., right next to the Brookings Institute. It's a key hub of the establishment.
Yeah, I know her name too. She's like a bit. I know her from something.
Boy, that's embarrassing for me that I could read that so
well,
hard.
It's still important to show that kind of language.
What she's saying is right, but it's just she meant it in completely the opposite way.
And so, I mean, I got called a racist over this for calling out the liberals being happy about the FBI doing this. I mean, it's so obvious what's going on here that they can't beat Donald Trump at the ballot box. So they have to do every sneaky, underhanded bullshit thing that they accuse him of being like. Of course, there's nobody more corrupt, sneaky, evil than the CIA and the FBI. There's nobody worse than that. And so they're trying to say that Trump was worse than them, and he's not. They're actually worse than him. And so this is just, and so people see it now. So I'm glad to hear that poll 70% of the voters. Now it's not 70% of the Republicans.
Not voters, just Republicans.
Yeah, just Republican voters see this.
Most voters overall actually believe that there was criminal wrongdoing by Trump and that the raid was legitimate, a plurality. It's like 46 to 35. But it doesn't matter because the Republican base is sticking with Trump.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. It's like,
and everything's completely polarized. So
yeah, and that's how they want it, by the way. And
completely.
It used to be the FBI used to keep progressives out of government, and now they're working overtime to keep Trump and Trump MAGA people out of government.
Well, let's not forget what the FBI did 2 weeks ago. They went after this indicted some Russian character who hosts conferences in Russia, but they used it as leverage in order to peg a black socialist organization called the Uhuru People's Movement.
Yes, the Uhuru People's Movement. Go ahead, Uhuru People's Movement.
The DOJ and the FBI used this indictment of a Russian in Moscow to peg this black socialist group as a Russian asset.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about this is that group actually ran a member for the mayor of St. Petersburg, not St. Petersburg in Russia, but St. Petersburg in Florida. And his name was Jesse Neville, and he got 2% of the vote, which actually shook the Democrats up. The way that you can see what the Democrats are trying to do with Matthew Ho, the Green Party candidate in North Carolina. It's because they're worried he's going to get 2 to 3% of the vote, and they think that will be the decisive edge and it will allow a Republican to win. So that's what I think pissed off that led to the FBI raid here, is that this party is actually running people in local elections, and they do have some cachet within the black community, and they're peeling off votes from the Democrats. So either way, whether it's going after the left or the right, it's the Democrats and the security state that are kneecapping their partisan enemies.
100%. And it's funny that they're called the Democratic Party because they couldn't be more anti-democratic. We wag our finger at dictators around the world, or Putin or Russia, and meanwhile the Democratic Party and the Republican Party work in tandem to make sure that third parties are not allowed on the ballots, make sure that they get raided by the FBI, that Ralph Nader has to spend all his time running in court instead of running for president because they're kicking him off ballots. And so that's what you have. You have the oligarchy making sure that regular people will never have a representative in government, and that's what it is. And when someone like AOC gets elected to government, or Ro Khanna, they immediately switch and they start doing the bidding of Nancy Pelosi, who is doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex in Wall Street. And so a vote for AOC or any Democrat at this point has turned out to be a vote for Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, big pharma, oil companies, and Silicon Valley. That's what when you vote for a Democrat, show me one fucking Democrat who's gone against any of that shit. They don't exist. They don't exist.
So I'm pretty sure, Jimmy, Michael Beschloss, the historian who called to kill or insinuated that Trump should be executed the same way the Rosenbergs were, was at a private meeting with Joe Biden. A bunch of historians met with Joe Biden, and they warned in this private meeting, for some reason they couldn't make this warning public, even though it was completely banal, that democracy was under threat. They would die on Biden's watch unless he did something. But here we have the security state being weaponized against a partisan enemy. The security state has gained unprecedented power since the Patriot Act and the post 9/11 era, but then through Spygate and the whole Russiagate hoax, it entrenched its power and is now a partisan weapon. And that, to me, even though the weapon is being directed at someone who I find generally odious, it's being directed against a civilian person who was elected president. And this is an unelected entity that has no accountability, that exists in secret, that conducts black operations. And we are supposed to stand with them to defend democracy? No. And that's why the Democratic Party is so deeply undemocratic, because they love the FBI. They love the CIA. Those are their heroes, because they wish that they would just wipe away this entire movement and let them rule permanently. And that's undemocratic. And I assume that the right, if they had the same power to do so, would do that. And we're setting the precedent for that right now.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm going to take a look at the judge that issued this warrant next. So that's our next thing, though. Hey, we're coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Detroit, Los Angeles, Spokane, Tacoma, Denver. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets for all our live shows. See you there.